Hello, my name is Jeffrey Watson,
And I'm Ethan Edwards.
and this is the Ridge Podcast.
Alrighty, so hello everybody. Today we have another book talk. While in the next few weeks we do have a lot of interviews, exciting interviews lined up. But while we're waiting for that, me and Ethan last night I was looking at some different literature, and I came across White Nights by Mr. Dostoevsky. And if we're mispronouncing his name,
Please forgive us.
yeah, we're not proficient in 18th century Russian pronunciation, but I came across his novel, and I've heard of him before. He wrote the Idiot,
Crime and Punishment.
The Brothers
Karamazov, something like that.
And Demons. So he's written many Russian classics. But I came across his White Nights, and it was on Kindle. I said, I'm going to read it. It's only 100 and some pages. So I texted Ethan. I said, you should check this out too. He said, well, let's do an episode on it tomorrow. I said, all right. So here we are.
Yeah.
This is my first experience with Russian literature.
Yeah, we apologize for the lack of interviews lately. With school winding down, we've been really busy, and we haven't had time to sit down with someone and have an interview. But like Luke mentioned, we plan on doing that in the next few weeks.
And we've scheduled a few interviews, but we've scheduled them a little bit too late. We kind of scheduling's been weird.
Yeah, we weren't sure what our schedule was going to be like these past 2 weeks.
Those tracks wrapping up too.
Yeah, with track and just extracurricular stuff. So we've had to kind of shuffle things around.
But I think our reading lot's been better than ever. I mean, for me, it's been incredible.
I've read a lot. I finished up a few books this week. We've read White Nights, and I'll be finishing up The Grapes of Wrath pretty soon. So yeah.
We've read The Grapes of Wrath. I read The Great Gatsby this week.
The Great Gatsby, yep.
So I guess we're both getting into more classical literature.
Yeah.
And it's really opening our eyes to so much of it out there.
Yeah, and after we hit classical literature, there are a few genres that we'd like to hit. Like I sent you a book yesterday. I don't remember the name of it, but it talks about language. It's more philosophical. It talks about language. I think it mentions computers a little bit, so stuff like that.
Like really on this podcast, classics and nonfiction, I'd like to hit a lot.
Yeah.
About books. So.
Yeah. When it comes to fiction, we'll hit it a little bit, but I think we'll probably hit more nonfiction than anything.
Yeah, here eventually. But yeah, so this is my first experience with Russian literature. How about yourself, Ethan?
Mine too, I think.
Everybody knows War and Peace.
Yeah, War and Peace.
Yeah, so this is my first experience with it. So I said, Ethan, let's read it. So we read it last night. And it was a pretty short piece. I was expecting it to be longer. It's about 70 to 80 pages.
I think the official number was 87.
Okay. And there was actually another novel, or another short story.
Yeah, Bodok, I think
Bodok. We're reading that right now, but it's a little little short story.
Yeah, 30 pages.
So White Nights is a short story novella written by Mr. Dostoevsky, and it's about loneliness.
Yeah.
And he's very lonely. So
yeah.
if you're reading something, hey, a little pick-me-up piece for the after a hard day at work, this might not be
It might not be for you.
Be the novel for you at the moment, or if your love life is in the dumps right now, it could be kind of
triggering.
Triggering, yeah. So I don't want to use that word, but it could be, because it's basically starts off with this man. We never really learn his name.
Yeah.
It never mentions that he's a narrator, and he's very lonely.
And he remarks about being so lonely very frequently.
So if the listener is lonely and you want a sympathy piece, this could be it here.
Yeah.
Because if you want to connect with something, if you want to connect with what you're feeling, it'd be perfect. Because he talks about how he has no friends, and he's connecting with inanimate objects like houses and stuff. He's building these relationships in his head with people he don't.
He walks by and he sees these people that he'll see every day, but he's never talked to them, and he says that he's like going to connection with them, and that they're sad when they don't see him, and he doesn't know. And
it makes you wonder if people are actually like that. People who do live in big cities, they don't have. Around here, we have so much family and friends and stuff, and we're connected with each other. If you move away, you have no connections, no roots, and you go to work, and you don't really have a social life. You can see how that'd be very easy to fall into a pattern like that where you don't know anybody.
Yeah.
So it's kind of scary in a way. But yeah, he builds this relationship with this house and stuff, and he feels sad for the house. And he lives in this run-down apartment building. He talks about how he doesn't find love, and he doesn't find friendship or connection with anybody. And he thinks everybody else is going off and doing these grand adventures.
We're going to the dachas, which is a Russian word for
countryside house.
Vacation house, yeah.
And he's kind of stuck in the city. One evening he decides to walk outside of the city and experiences the countryside. It's like he's escaped the city walls. And it's kind of like this moment where he's really happy. He's almost euphoric. Just this little thing. The little things that make him really happy. And then he starts talking about how he's a dreamer. And this is what I wanted to really talk about most during the interview is the aspect of dreamers.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was extremely interesting how he wrote about that. He built this fantasy life in his head, and he didn't really need anything else because he built up everything he needed in his
head.
daydreaming.
Yeah, this kind of, and I don't know if this is totally politically correct, but it reminds me of mental illness.
Oh, absolutely.
And I almost pity the character because he has no friends, he has no family, no loved ones, and he goes around the city making friends, feeling sorry for a house that's repainted, making friends with people he's never met or never spoken to. But in his head, he has these friendships. And I'm not a psychologist, and I don't know what mental disorder this might possibly be, but it kind of makes me think of one.
I was just at the library and saw an encyclopedia of Freud.
Mm-hmm.
We could have, if I known we would be talking about this today, I could have went and stopped by and we could have diagnosed him here live on the podcast. But no, yeah. So he's a dreamer. He builds up these fantasies in his head, but he never goes out there and actually lives the fantasies, lives a life. Until one night, he's passing by this lady, and she's crying, and something comes up to him, and he asks her what's the matter. Well, it's dark. It's nighttime. It's in the big city of St. Petersburg, Russia. And she takes off running from him. She thinks he's some
creep,
vagabond creep guy.
Yeah.
And then she actually runs into a creep.
Yeah.
And he kind of
rescues
her. And he starts talking to her. And he says he never really got the nerve to talk to people, especially women, because he thought they wouldn't give him the time of day.
Yeah.
He never even tried.
Yeah.
And that's what she talked about. She said, he never tried before. Before this, he goes into this long monologue of why he's lonely and everything. Yeah, and I said, dude, you're not...
It's kind of hard to get through, honestly. Yeah, I read some excerpts from his later books, and I think Dostoevsky wrote this book kind of early on in his writing career, and
it's good. It's really good.
Yeah.
But you can tell he's newer at it.
Yeah, because I didn't really want to read that monologue. Like, I read it, of course, but I don't feel like it added a whole lot to the story, but...
I think it shows how desperate he was.
Yeah, I think going back to my mental illness example, it illustrates that pretty well. But back to the excerpts, like I'll read something from Bodok, which I think was written a little bit a little bit later, and it seemed much better written.
Yes.
And I was like, wow, okay, I feel like I could just sit down and read this for.
It was a lot more
forever
approachable.
Yeah.
To the reader. And I was kind of wondering about the translation, too.
Yeah, me too.
Are we getting the real...
Yeah, so...
Maybe it was meant to be the prose. Are they like it?
Yeah,
Did
so...
it come across the way
the prose.
You
and
wrote them?
It even talks about being prosaic
in
the book. And I thought that was an interesting way to put it. And it makes me wonder if I had learned Russian and I read it, would I still get the same sense that it was poorly written? Or would I think that,
so
wow,
you
this
think
is
it was poorly
beautiful?
Written?
I don't think it was poorly written. That's poor choice of words. But
so listen to the audience.
I don't feel it was super beneficial.
Ethan thinks Dostoevsky writes his books poorly.
No. I guess I didn't appreciate 5-page monologues about how lonely he is.
Yeah. But I think he has a purpose, too.
I agree, yeah.
That's that purpose. I said, dude, you're blowing it.
Yeah.
I said, you're trying to get this girl, and you're not doing it right at all.
Yeah. I feel like he's too wrapped up in his own pity to actually do something.
What did he say? It was like a fire hydrant that if he didn't say what was on his mind at that point, he was going to explode.
Maybe.
And she asked, why are you saying this to me? But yeah, so he goes on this big long monologue about he never talks to people. She said, well, you're talking to me now. She said, if you gave people time of day, they would actually listen to you.
Hold on, I think we skipped over a part here. So we mentioned that she ran away from him, and she ran by like a creep who tried to I guess grab her, and our narrator here kind of walks with her and tries to discourage the creep from following, and he does that successfully. Yeah. But then they get to talking, and that's how they meet, and that's how the trauma dumping begins.
Yeah, he's not smooth, to say the least.
No, he's not. He's not very charismatic, but he's very forward with his feelings.
Yes.
Which is honestly kind of refreshing, because you would maybe not refreshing, but you would expect someone with that low of self-confidence to be more reserved. But he just laid it all out. He had a moment of self-doubt when he was laying it out afterwards, but she responded positively to it, and she kind of reciprocated. And
we can see, I mean, it had been building for a while, this build-up of emotion in him, because earlier in the book, he talks about how he had been in a melancholy state for weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Normally, he was happy the way he was.
Yeah.
But in the past few days for him, he was going through a really what modern artists can depression.
Yeah.
He was probably clinically depressed.
Yeah. And it was because all these people he thought he knew were moving away with their, he says these, I don't remember what exactly word he used, but these husbands that moved away with their families.
Yeah, so everybody was leaving, and he wasn't going anywhere.
Yeah.
So he became profoundly lonely. But yeah, so he just trauma dumped on her. And she took it.
Yeah.
She was very kind to him.
Yeah.
And he kind of not only asked her out,
but he asked
to
if
talk to her again.
Yeah, he wanted to speak to her again, and before he asked this, she started trauma dumping a little bit and talked about how she was pinned to her mother.
Her grandmother.
Her grandmother, sorry, yeah. Her grandmother was blind, and her grandmother had kind of sewn like articles of clothing to each other so that she would have to stay with her grandmother, which is a very strange concept.
And her grandmother's not evil in any sense. She's not a villain in the story, because in the end she ends up being kind of
beneficial to the story.
Kind of encouraging her granddaughter's relationships with somebody.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, because I think her granddaughter was young and she wanted her to study.
Mm-hmm.
So I think she kept her because she couldn't say anything. I mean, I guess she had to do something.
Yeah.
But yeah, so she told the story of how, or as the half of the story, as she later says, of her relationship with the grandmother, and how, she can't go anywhere. So I think she's lonely herself. Yeah. She don't have any connections too. So they both kind of met, and
like something in common.
And they have something in common. And whether they click romantically, no, they don't. But they do respect each other. So they decide to meet the next night at the same spot. It's like a bench, kind of. What did it say? It was like a
I got
wall,
the sense.
kinda.
I got the sense it was kind of like the bottom of a wall, almost.
Yeah.
But I don't know. The text, at least to me, wasn't super specific if they met the second night at that same spot that they encountered each other the first night, or if they kind of met at her house.
I think it was near her house.
Yeah, and I think it's probably in a general area.
Yeah. So she says, and before she says, "I'll meet with you tomorrow night on a few conditions." And this is kind of not cliche, but you can't fall in love with me. Of course, he agrees.
Because he was just happy to have someone to talk to.
Yeah, he agrees. And this is kind of, I think you can see this in real life too, with people who are dreamers. Do you consider yourself to be a dreamer? Do you build grand fantasies in your head about stuff?
You've labeled some people as romantics, right? And I don't think I'm a dreamer, but I do consider myself a romantic about some subjects. Yeah. There are some subjects where I just find them enthralling.
Passionate.
I'm passionate about them.
Lively, yes.
Exactly. Like recently it's been Spanish and linguistics, or previously it was computers, and I don't say I would dream about it, but I would think about it a lot, and I would...
Yeah, just being very passionate about stuff. And I think dreamers in this sense is more in almost a negative way. It's not really positive. It's not... I think I dream of stuff, and I make grandiose plans and stuff, and a lot of times I get myself into more than I can handle. But in this case, a dreamer is somebody who has these fantasies but makes no attempt to ever
I think daydreamer really would be...
really.
It'd be a better
So he has this experience with this woman, and he can't go home that night. He has to walk, his mind's racing. He has to walk around the street of St. Petersburg all night thinking. And this man is the definition of being inside your own head.
Yeah.
Like he lives his whole life inside of his head. So he's constantly confounding himself. So he is restless for the next 24 hours until he can meet her again. And then they meet.
I think he even mentions that he shows up an hour early.
An hour early to meet her, yes.
Because he was just so excited.
Yeah. So they talk, and she says, tell me your story from the beginning. He's almost rude to her. He doesn't want to tell his story.
Yeah.
He goes again to how he's lonely and his, how he's stuck in his house, and how his main concern in life is his pet spider's cobwebs. Not even his pet, it's the spider that's built cobwebs.
I think he was kind of talking about how his maid didn't do their job, and they didn't clean them right.
Yeah.
Seems like a very small issue to have.
Yeah, and he's just kind of stuck. Yeah. Basically stuck. He has nowhere to go. And he's almost mean to her in a way.
Yeah.
He says, don't interrupt me. And she says, well, okay.
Yeah.
And then she tells her story, and she says, don't interrupt me either. So she's there's a nice back and forth between
She didn't take it,
No, so there's almost, it's not one-sided. They're kind of, not disrespect, but they're back and forth.
Yeah.
So she tells her story, and I really love this part. This is probably my favorite. It's the most coherent part.
Yeah,
of the novel.
her story was...
It's very linear.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed that part of the novel.
I wonder, and so I mentioned earlier, his story, like, not Luke joked about not being well written, but I think it being as rambly as it was probably played into the character development, because I didn't find her speech or writing rambly at all. Dostoevsky actually kind of hints at this with his character development. He alludes to it. He talks about how the girl wasn't educated, and she was worried that she wouldn't be able to properly formulate her thoughts, and that she was trying to defer to the narrator to speak her thoughts. But he wasn't able to do that despite maybe being educated. The story didn't really ever say. And I just found it ironic that the girl, Natinsky, is that how you say it?
I'm not really sure how to pronounce it.
It was a Russian name. Once again, we don't speak Russian, so we don't really know how to say it. But the girl, to me, she appeared very well educated.
Yeah, she was smart.
Or at least well spoken.
But yeah, with Russian again, and I'm pretty sure the translation has a lot to do with the prose too.
Yeah.
And it is Russian literature.
Yeah.
We've never read any before.
Yeah, that's true.
How do they write? This is our first experience with it. So yeah, it's all new to us. But yeah, so this part was very coherent, and you get to see her story. And she starts out the story. She's 16 years old. She's studying with her grandmother. She's very sad.
Yeah, she studies French though, and this is a cultural note. I don't know exactly when this was considered, when this really was a big part of Russian culture, but educated Russians would learn French, and they would read French books, and they would try to speak French to each other if you were upper class, and then the lower class citizens, I guess, would speak Russian. And I think it was some Tsar that kind of, I almost want to say it was Peter, that kind of encouraged this, encouraged the use of Russian throughout the upper class and the lower class. I don't know exactly which Tsar it was, but I'm pretty sure it was one of the more recent ones.
Well, Russian history. I mean, if you want to talk about Russian history, you could go into a whole series.
Is Tsar the right word, I guess?
At that point, it was. Because this was before the Bolshevik Revolution.
Yeah, that's
so they
true.
could actually write.
Yeah.
These. Because
yeah.
I think this book came out in 1848. So I think he wrote the book in 1848.
Some.
Yeah.
Around there. Yeah.
And for those of you who don't, because he couldn't. For those of you who don't know, he was a devout Christian, Orthodox Christian, and he was a staunch anti-socialist. So he probably couldn't write the stuff he was writing later on.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, to be fair, you mentioned Orthodox Christianity. Orthodox Christianity was the norm in Russia at that time, just because of schism and everything.
Yeah.
I don't remember the formal name of the leader in Orthodox Christianity. Like Catholicism has the Pope.
Is it the? That's gonna bother me because I think they still have one today.
Yeah, they do. Yeah.
Hold on.
Not as
we're trying to.
well known as the Pope though, but and that might just be a consequence of us being Westerners.
I think it's a lot more ceremonial today. I mean, in a sense.
In a sense, yeah. So there's a lot of history behind that. Like in the Catholic Church, they had this Reformation, I guess, called Vatican II, which redid how
the Patriarch.
Yeah, the Patriarch. Yeah, which redid how a lot of Catholic services are executed, and the Orthodox Church never had Vatican II, which reformed a lot of the services in the Catholic Church. But yeah, the Patriarch has always had close ties with Russia. I think in disregard the connotations that you might have about Putin, I think Putin and the Patriarch had met on multiple occasions.
And we don't want to get into politics, but there is a lot of controversy about the Russian Patriarch right now and Putin and the war in Ukraine, because it's just not a good situation all around.
Yeah, and I think a lot of Ukrainians are Orthodox Christians too.
Yeah, so
I think that's kind of caused a rift in the Orthodox Church, because you have Orthodox Russians and then Orthodox Ukrainians who share the same faith but are at odds politically. And
obviously, me and Ethan don't support the war in Ukraine, but it's interesting looking at Russian literature because it's.
Yeah, well,
classic.
Just because you read Russian or like Russian as a language doesn't mean you can condone the actions.
Absolutely not. They go to the country, and it's a whole different.
Yeah, and the language is spoken by millions of people around the world.
Russian, the culture is fascinating.
Yeah,
very interesting. I would love to learn more about it. But yeah, I mean, and you're really interested in religion too.
Yeah.
As you can tell, Ethan knows a lot about different religions and is very interested in it. Some I don't know as much about. But yeah. But absolutely.
Yeah. So what got us onto this tangent? I don't remember exactly.
I'm not sure, but I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
talking about how what time period it was written in.
Yeah.
And how she was learning French.
Yeah. So
She
there
was
we go.
16 years old. She was learning
Second
French
night.
with her grandmother. She sat beside her grandmother all day,
Mm-hmm.
like pinned to her, and the grandmother would make her read to her in French.
Mm-hmm.
I forget which book she was reading.
It mentioned a few.
Some recognizable.
Yeah, but so what's important in this story is that these books were gifted to them by
Well, one of their tenants, they live in a boarding house. Grandmother runs a boarding house, kind of. And one of their older tenants moved out, and this young man moved in, a very smart young man.
And he gifted them the books that they read.
It starts out with a few books he gives her, like 3 or 4.
Yeah,
and
something
then
like
it
that.
gets like more and more. He starts giving her a ton of books. Yeah. But she makes her way through them. And he says, "Have you read any of them?" She says, "I read all of them."
Yeah.
Because that's all she does. Is read to her grandmother. And she has this crush on him, obviously, because he's an older guy. He doesn't really come around. He kind of, I don't know if he avoids them. I don't know how he could go with it.
Okay, so it mentions an interaction previously. And she had high hopes for the interaction. She thought that he was interested romantically, but then she does something to embarrass herself. I don't remember exactly what. And
she gets up. She runs away.
But they were tied together. And she ended up pulling her grandmother.
Yeah, she ends up pulling the clothes apart or something.
Yeah.
And he sees her.
Yeah.
All of her, and she's.
I
think because the other clothes pulled together and the stitching comes apart when she tries to run away.
I'm pretty sure she tries to get up and she kind of jerks her grandmother with her, and there's a bit of a mishap there.
That's what her version I got it, but so she's mortified.
Yeah. Anyways.
She's really embarrassed.
She embarrassed herself, yeah.
And she's too afraid to talk to him anymore, and she avoids him. I'm not really sure how they can live. I'm assuming the house is not that big. How they can live in a house like that and not see each other.
I got
for
the
weeks
sense that it was an apartment complex or a
she lives in the attic. I think they have one tenant. That's all.
Yeah, that's true. I guess I didn't really think about this much, but the sense I got from it was that they lived in almost a motel style building, and then they were
and that could be absolutely.
And because I think it mentions he was coming up the stairs one day, and I imagine that he was coming up to the second floor of a motel building, and then they encountered each other.
Yeah, and I think something we didn't touch before we move on. The novel was split up between not only chapters but first night, second night, third night,
and then in the morning eventually,
fourth night, and in the morning. So yeah, so she's extremely embarrassed. She doesn't talk to him much, but then he starts giving her books and stuff. And eventually, I think he wants to take her out on a date.
Yeah.
To it's
a play, I guess.
And she says no.
Yeah.
She not really says no, but she doesn't want.
She's worried that her grandmother won't approve.
Find out.
Yeah.
So she thought about this plan to have. She snuck out before. She had her maid, she's deaf, sit in her place beside her grandmother.
Yeah.
Well, her grandmother was talking to her, and the deaf woman couldn't speak to the grandmother. Because we didn't know it was obvious if.
Yeah, she was found out.
So found out, and nothing really. Everything kind of went south after that, so she couldn't really leave.
Yeah.
So eventually, the guy came down for breakfast and wanted to eat with them, and asked both of them, the granddaughter and the grandmother, to go see the Barber of Seville, which is a play. And the grandmother said yes, because grandmother loved to see plays.
Yeah, especially when she was younger.
And this is also, when you kind of see the grandmother's not as mean, because I thought this one was terrible. She's keeping this young girl pinned up beside her. But she also says she wants her granddaughter to
enjoy the night.
The play.
Yeah.
And maybe she has her granddaughters.
Yeah. And I think
well-being.
The daughter even remarks she sounds evil, but she's not. She just wants the best for me. And you could interpret that as Stockholm syndrome, or you could interpret that as the grandma really does mean the best for her. She just maybe is a little bit misguided.
Yeah. But they go to the play. It goes good.
Mm-hmm.
They come back, and she thought that was going to be something of the start of a relationship.
Yeah.
And he just avoids her.
Yeah.
So she's kind of left on the hook here. And Then he takes her out a few more times, both of them, the grandmother and how do you say it?
Natinska?
Nastenska? I'm
Nastik?
sorry,
I don't know.
the young girl.
Yeah.
He takes her out, both of them. And so nothing really goes anywhere. He sees them less and less as time goes on, which you think would be more and more, but it's not.
Yeah, and she remarks on how she thinks he's avoiding her, and it's pretty upsetting to her.
Yeah. But she figures out he's going to leave. He's going to Moscow for a year. He's coming back, but he's leaving, going to Moscow for a year to work because he's a pretty educated guy.
Yeah.
And she realizes her life's going nowhere.
Yeah.
She's pimps out a grandmother. And this is where this novel has a lot of restlessness in it. These people are restless.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I wonder if that's a product of the culture. Do you remember what year the Bolshevik Revolution happened?
19.
Oh, okay, so.
19. I think it was in the 19.
Regardless, this is way after the book was written, right?
No. Yeah, 1919, I think.
That sounds about right to me.
This will drive me crazy. But yeah, so he's leaving. And everybody's restless, like we said before, everybody's restless in this time period. I don't really know why, but I think these characters are just pinned up and they're very lonely. And she sees this as kind of her last chance at love, which is kind of crazy because she's 16 years old.
Yeah.
1917.
1917 was
March 8th, 1917. Has her last chance of love, so she's having this almost mental breakdown, kind of.
Yeah.
And she goes up to his attic. She's going to profess her love to him.
Well, she packs up all of her clothes.
All of her clothes, too. She's going to...
Yeah.
She wants to run away and marry him.
Yeah.
She says it takes an hour for her to get up the staircase to his attic door. And finally she goes in and she starts crying. She has all of her stuff.
Something that the author's pretty vivid with this. She throws her sack onto his bed. I just thought that was funny.
And she doesn't even say, let's get married. But he knows immediately what she's trying to do. I think she's a pretty attractive young lady. I don't know, because it says she's pretty, but she was kind of sickly. She almost made herself sick from sadness.
Yeah.
She's a very pretty girl, but
ghastly she was.
Ghastly because she just wasn't living. Mm-hmm. So she didn't have the will to live. So she comes up and she professes her love to him. She says she wants to run away with him. He says no, it wouldn't work out. You're your grandmother. Mm-hmm. But he says he would marry her if she's still willing in a year.
He also mentions how he wasn't in a spot to do that right now because I don't really think he was financially prepared to do that. And he said he had to go to Moscow for a year, and I guess, and this isn't isn't really realistic, but he had to go to Moscow for a year to be able to provide that support.
Well, today, during that time, maybe people did do. Arranged marriages and family marriages were extremely prominent during that time.
Yeah.
So a lot of times people didn't date a few weeks or a month, even at all, before they got married.
Yeah.
If they even met.
Yeah, that's true.
So during this time, this rapid, progression of relationship might have been realistic, especially when it was a whole other culture too. And you're talking about 18th century, not even America, 18th century Russia.
Yeah.
So who knows?
Culture. Yeah.
I haven't done any research into their culture in that time period.
Just to the listener, we apologize if we're ignorant about any of these topics. Like, this is Eastern culture. We're not Eastern. We're very much so Westerners.
As you can get. So, but we're learning.
Yeah.
And I think that's the key.
Yeah, that's why we're reading.
Learning it a lot. I mean, I learned so much from reading 100-page or 80-page story.
So it's something interesting. There's like The Grapes of Wrath is starkly Western, and then this is pretty Eastern in comparison.
Eastern.
Yeah.
So. Well, I'm reading a lot of American classics right now, and it's really kind of interesting to kind of transplant myself into Eastern classics.
Yeah.
Kind of all of a sudden. But yeah, so he says, he's in a financial situation. He also has work lined up. Work for him personally in Moscow. So he says, if you still want to in a year, if you're still in the same place, if I'm still in the same place, we'll meet at the same spot, the same day, exactly a year from now.
Yeah, and he promises that he will not fall in love with anyone. But he tells her that if you find someone, marry them.
Yeah, do it.
And I thought that was interesting. If somewhat noble, but also if somewhat kind of stupid. Because I don't feel like that's being fair to himself. He could meet someone in Moscow, and I just feel like setting that expectation up that he will come back isn't completely realistic or fair. But I do think it illustrates later on in the book. It aids in telling a story,
and that can be used that can be seen a lot in a lot of relationships today, especially young.
Yeah, like
I mean,
I'll go off to
guy.
college for 4 years, don't do anything, and then
Yeah.
they don't come back, right?
Yeah. So I mean, this is probably very relatable to a lot of people.
Yeah.
So yeah, he leaves, and that's basically it for the story for a year. Pick up back. She's 17 on the night our narrator.
Yeah. So this is the first night.
And it's the night that he's supposed to come back.
Yeah.
And she's at the same exact spot he told her to be in a year, and he never shows up.
Yeah. And
She's crying.
yeah, we find out later why she runs away, because our narrator walks by and kind of looks at her because he notices that she's crying, and she realizes it's not him, and that upsets her.
Yeah.
'Cause She was just hoping that it was him, but it's not.
Yeah.
So she runs away in tears.
And so that's where our story is moved back to the present. And it's the second night, and he wants to help her find
This dude,
this guy,
Yeah.
which is kind of
he's kind of noble.
in a way, but I think he's just grasping at anything to make a connection with her.
Yeah. And
At that point,
having a friend.
having a friend, and he is falling in love with her, and she told him not to, but he is.
Yeah. And I don't even really think he realizes it at first.
Nobody says all I wanted to do was just talk to somebody.
Yeah.
And that would be all I needed to dream about. So anyways, so yeah, all I wanted was something that he could use in his fantasies, just a little something to get him to spice it up. All I wanted was to spice it up. And then now he's falling in love with this girl. So he says he's gonna write a letter and he's gonna take him to the guy's friends to try to get them connected again.
Yeah.
Because she knows he's back in
Some
town.
acquaintances, right?
Acquaintances.
Well, she says that she
says he's
knows,
back in.
but she has no evidence. But she just has this feeling that
He's
he's
back.
back in town, and I kind of rolled my eyes when I was reading that. Like,
Yeah.
she's kind of delusional about this, really.
But so yeah, they part their separate ways, and the next night it rains. He can't see her, and he's in like this massive depressive state that he can't be with her.
Because she told him the second night that if it's raining tomorrow, I won't come see you.
Yeah.
And he still goes out there even though it's raining, and he says like, hopefully she won't notice the rain.
Yeah.
Well,
so she doesn't come, and he's sitting there, and he's massively depressed.
Yeah.
And that's when he goes home, and he's sitting there, and he's in the dumps. On the third day, no letters come back. They meet again.
Mm-hmm.
And the third night, they really get more, almost intimate, more personal.
Yeah.
It's a lot more personal.
And they kind of really at this point they start declaring their love for each
Almost.
other.
Almost.
It's a soft.
Yeah, it's very.
She talks about how great of a person he is, how kind he is, and how caring, and how she wishes that he was him being the fellow who moved to Moscow.
And that's about as far as it goes that night.
Yeah, but the narrator thinks in the book. He doesn't say it though. We're able to read his thoughts a little bit. He says, like, he remarks how much he loves her too.
Yeah.
But he knows we can't say anything because
he promised.
Yeah.
And then it goes to the fourth night, and this is where everything breaks loose.
Yeah.
He's not come back yet, and he declares his love for her. That's this night.
And she talks about how angry she is with this dude. How much, like, I don't think she ever says that she hates him.
Yeah,
but
she did at one point.
She
did at one point directly.
Okay. She gets she's very upset with this businessman who went to Moscow. Does it ever give a name?
He doesn't. I don't think he ever says.
Yeah, but
I think she might be the only named character.
I think so too. I think the maid. I think
both of their maids are named. That's right.
Yeah, I think the maid's named.
Both their names are made. But yeah, so she says, you shouldn't have fallen in love with me, but here we are. He's not coming back. Yeah. And so they both kind of decide that night that, you know what, screw it. We're going to do it together.
Yeah.
And they're actually going to move in the next day. That's how fast their relationship happens. And this goes again to how her grandmother kind of wants the best for her. Her grandmother had been asking for her to get a lieutenant in.
Yeah.
And she said preferably a younger man.
Yeah. And Luke hinted at this earlier.
Yeah. She said, why a younger man? And grandma says, well, I mean, what she says, don't try to go off and get married or anything. And the young woman, she says, well, her grandmother wouldn't have mentioned that if that's not what she had wanted. Mm-hmm. She was hitting that, go ahead and bring somebody in. So that's what she does. And they walk around most of the night just talking to each other.
Yeah.
And it's kind of awkward, but they get along good. Yeah. And they're forming a good relationship.
Yeah. And I honestly think it would have worked out perfectly fine.
Yeah,
'Cause-
it worked out good.
Yeah.
Because they say they're going to go home, and then they walk this way, and so they're going to walk this way, and this way, and this way, and they just enjoy talking to each other.
Yeah. And, well, something I think is a bit adorably naive is talk about how well they know each other and how they know everything about each other because they've trauma dumped onto each other. And I think it's just kind of cute.
Yeah.
Even
And
it's not,
everything's going beautifully.
yeah.
And there's 8 pages left of the novel.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, great. This is going to be a great happy ending. And then the guy comes back.
Yeah.
The businessman from Moscow, and she literally flees from his arms to him, then flees back to his arms,
Kisses him.
apologizes, and is gone forever.
Yeah.
And the man is devastated.
Yeah. He doesn't know what to do.
And then that kind of ends that chapter, and it picks up the next morning.
Yeah.
And
He's up and he's kind of just moping around, and he gets a letter from a courier.
yeah,
Courier.
a courier.
And it's a letter from the girl, and she talks about how sorry she is, and she really profusely apologizes, and
we'll still be friends forever.
Yeah.
And then you come by.
she
And
says,
you'll love the new husband.
"Yeah,
It's great."
Yeah, and she talks about how much she still loves the narrator, how awesome he is, and how she wishes that he was him still.
Yeah, and
And-
it's kind of her and him had more in common than she ever had with this businessman. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's kind of
I feel like it was just kind of she had FOMO. She wanted something she
didn't have,
yeah.
and she had built up this whole fantasy in her head that she could never live down.
Yeah.
She had to have that.
Yeah.
And and later I want to read some quotes, different quotes from the story. We can comment on them because his writing is beautiful.
Oh yeah.
But the
Some
way
parts.
the story, some parts, the way the story ends, he's talking about he sees his life in the future, and he talks about how he built up these fantasies in his head, and they actually happened, and now he can't go back to those fantasies again because he's lived them. So what does he have? It's almost a profound sense of loss.
Yeah.
You know what he wanted. Always wondered. He always envisioned him doing these things, and he actually did them, and they were great. But now he actually wants to do them and not fantasize about it anymore.
Yeah.
So he sees himself in 15 years, gray-headed,
Lonely.
lonely,
Sad.
depressed,
Depressed.
still dreaming,
Yeah.
fantasizing his life away, and that's where the story ends.
Yeah. Well, and then there's one really profound quote at the end.
I can read it directly from here.
Yeah.
My God, a moment of bliss. Why isn't that enough for a lifetime?
Yeah. Just a moment. And
Just a moment.
I thought that was profound. It really does make you feel bad for him because you could say before this point in the story, before these few days in the story, he really didn't do much to try to make himself happy. He was waiting for something to fall into his lap, and then one day something did fall into his lap, and then he lost it,
Yeah.
and he just kind of kept feeling sorry for himself.
He says here, and so I ask myself, where are your dreams? And I shake my head and mutter how the years go by. And I ask myself again, what have you done with those years? Where have you buried your best moments? Have you really lived? Look, I say to myself, how cold it is becoming all over the world. And more years will pass, and behind them will creep grim isolation. Tottering senility will become hobbling, leaning on a crutch. And behind these will come unrelieved boredom and despair. The world of fancies will fade, dreams will wilt and die, and fall like autumn leaves from the trees. He talks about how his dreams are getting worn down.
Yeah.
He says, he's just, it says right here, in the end, you feel that your much vaunted, inexhaustible fantasy is growing tired, debilitated, exhausted, because you're bound to grow out of your old ideals. They're smashed to splinters and turned to dust. And if you have no other life, you have no choice but to keep rebuilding your dreams from the splinters and dust. So it's getting less and less potent as time goes on, his life, his dreams. But the heart longs for something different, and it is vain to dig in the ashes of your old fancies. Trying to find even a tiny spark to fan into a new flame that will warm the chilled heart and bring back to life everything that can send the blood rushing wildly through the body. Fill the eyes with tears, everything that can delude you so well.
So not all the monologue is written that beautifully.
No, but I said, reading these, it's like,
Yeah, and to the listener, there's this book is technically in the public domain. You have to keep in mind that we read a translation. I don't believe the translation that we read is in the public domain, but there are some
No, but
that
there's
are.
some that are, and because you can get it on. I looked and I actually have it downloaded on Apple Books.
Yeah.
On your phone, for free.
Yeah, and I think there's this organization called Gettysburg Press. I don't know. It's pretty prominent. Public domain publisher. That had it available on the website. If I can find it again, I'll be sure to link it in the show notes. But yeah, anyone can read this with some minor discrepancies. In the translation.
And you still get the same idea. But
yeah.
I think the Penguin Classics.
Yeah, that's the version we read. The Penguin
I
Classics.
think they're some of the best.
Yeah, and
because they do a whole series, Penguin Classics.
Yeah.
And they're all really, really good. Yeah. So and people in the book community love Penguin Classics.
Yeah, so
they're pretty widely respected.
Ronald Meyer did our translation.
Yeah.
The one that we read.
And a shout out to him if he's
listening hopefully.
Still out there.
Yeah.
One more little quote to end. He says, I sometimes have moments of such despair, because in those moments I start to think that I will never be capable of beginning to live a real life. Mm-hmm. Because I have already begun to think that I have lost all sense of proportion. Yeah. All sense of the real and the actual, because what is more, I have cursed myself, because my nights of fantasy are followed by hideous moments of sobering, and all the time one hears the human crowd swirling and thundering around one in the whirlwind of life. One sees how people live, that they live in reality, that for them life is not something forbidden, that their lives are not scattered for the winds like dreams or visions, but are forever in a process of renewal, forever young, and that no two moments in them are ever the same. While how dreary and monotonous to the point of being vulgar is timorous fantasy, the slavish shadow of the idea. I mean, that's good, right?
That's beautiful. And if it's that beautiful in a translation,
what is it like in its original?
The original, yeah. Luke, I think we ought to learn Russian.
Yeah. We might have to learn Russian anyway.
Maybe not. I think us both learning a language and documenting our process
would be fascinating.
Yeah.
But there's so many things we get ourselves into. Me and Ethan are interested in
a
lot.
Yeah.
So I find myself getting interested in this.
Yep.
Meteorology, really deep, and then Russian literature.
Yeah.
And it's all this and running at the same time. It's crowded. But if you can combine all this stuff into one day.
Yeah, it's hard to keep up with. So you mentioned combining it, and we're getting off way on a tangent now, but what if we listen to, so we're learning a language, right? What if we listen to the audiobook of Dostoevsky's original works in Russian while we're running, right?
Maybe not his classic.
Combining them all.
Yeah, but maybe he wrote a lot of short stories.
Yeah.
That stuff. And most of them you can find available free audiobooks on YouTube.
Yeah.
Because they are in the public domain. Absolutely check him out. I can't imagine how this is not widely known at all.
Yeah.
Not nearly his most famous work.
Mm-hmm.
His most famous works are
Crime
some of his famous
Idiot.
Russian classics of all time. So if you can get a profound realization like I have out of an 80-page short story that is not widely known, what is his classics like?
Yeah.
I mean, he really gets in stride. So I recommend him fully. The White Knights made you think. I think it was a perfect read for me right now.
Yeah, I get, and it was nice and short. It wasn't too much of a time commitment.
Something different.
Yeah, and I think starting out, especially with a new genre, reading something short, not too overwhelming, is good to start.
I watched a video last night, How to Get into Russian Literature.
Yeah, I read a few articles this morning.
Talks about short stories.
Yeah.
And I read specifically How to Get into Russian Literature by reading Dostoevsky.
Yeah. And
it specifically talks about White Knights. Mm-hmm. It's a perfect kind of, almost a taste of getting into it. But absolutely, I would love to learn Russian.
I think maybe this is probably not totally accurate, but I think poetry in a certain genre would be a certain
I read some poetry today at the library.
Yeah.
Is it hard to get through?
Oh, yes, for sure.
Yes. But is it kind of beneficial? Sure, I'm trying to get into it because they have these beautiful whole set of Harvard World's Best Poetry collection sets. Mm. I mean, and are me and you dreamers? I don't know. Because we sit here and talk about all these big plans and
we get to them.
Sometimes they happen and sometimes they don't. And
I'd say more we do than don't.
Yeah. And sometimes we get ourselves into something that we have no business being involved in or not skilled enough to get involved in.
Yeah.
And in a world of hurt.
Yeah. And I think that's a learning opportunity, though.
Mm.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Getting out and living life.
I think these book talks, and although they're centered on a book, I think they're an opportunity for us to digress and have some moments of self-reflection on the air.
Because, I mean, it's philosophy.
Yeah.
That's what you're supposed to get from reading.
Yeah.
Enjoyment.
Yeah.
Reading is not always zapping what you can get out of it. It's enjoying the reading. I really enjoyed reading this book. But it's also about learning something.
And I think if you're fretting about what you're getting out of it as you're reading it, you're not going to get anything.
Like in school, we're reading The Great Gatsby right now. Our teacher is a great English teacher, and we have to do assignments on each chapter.
Yeah.
Because it's school. Yeah. I mean, you don't have to, but that's just what everybody's always done. And I read the whole novel in like a day. Mm-hmm. But now we're reading like chapter by chapter and writing like worksheets on each chapter. And you don't get nothing from that. You don't get anything from it. You might get something. For those who don't read, I guess it makes people accountable. It doesn't really, you don't really get much from it. Let kids read. Let them
read what they want to read.
Yeah, but also try to get them interested in them.
Yeah.
Let them read at their own pace, too.
Yeah, I agree.
Say, hey, you have to have done by this date.
Yeah.
And just let them read it and enjoy it. Give them time to read it in class.
Yeah, and I think if they don't read it, then that's the consequences of their own action. But
reading books, I wouldn't have assignments and stuff on it. My final exam would be on the book project, 10 minutes for each student. Yeah. A whole week. Yeah. You know, it wouldn't have to be all at the same time. You got to take many class periods. But throughout the week, come up and talk to me at my desk. What's your thoughts on the book? What did you get from it? Yeah. What did you think about this? Yeah. Did you get any deeper learning from it? I mean, did you get any ideas for philosophy from it? What did you think about this idea of loneliness or the Great Gatsby, hanging on to the past? Mm-hmm. And that can be a lot more beneficial. Have conversations, one-on-one conversations like we're having. Yeah. That's what's great about reading. Yeah. Learning something from it, getting something. So.
And my dad often talks about liberal arts education and absorbing a work and understanding it.
Is it deep learning?
I don't know if deep learning would be accurately describing it.
I'm not sure what that is. I saw deep learning on the bookshelf here. I thought that might be.
Maybe, but he really talks about how we were at a graduation party last night and we saw a book on rhetoric on one of the tables. And he talks about how his entire program at Wake Forest was based off a single book in rhetoric and understanding things, learning how to think. And I think reading books, especially classics, I don't know why specifically classics, but classics and trying outside of a fabricated environment, maybe like a classroom, not fabricated, but forced environment like a classroom is beneficial. Because I think that I've learned more reading the few books that I have over the past few months than I have in the books than I have learned reading the books in the classroom.
Did you ever read much classics before then?
Not really, no.
Because from the start of the podcast to now, when I started reading the classics, and it's become kind of you realize how many there are out there.
Yes, yeah, and you see, before this, I really just read science fiction.
Yeah, me too. Science fiction and fantasy.
Yeah, science fiction.
And a lot of history and nonfiction.
Really, even more science fiction for me. And I read a lot of nonfiction, specifically history when it comes to technology or whatever I'm currently interested in. But nothing really philosophical like what we've been reading is.
Well, yeah, and my great grandfather, he was a huge reader. Mm-hmm. He was in Korea, and all the photos from the war is him in a bunk reading a book.
Yeah,
all different photos. So I have a ton of books in my house, a lot in my library I've gotten over the years. And I have only room, but when he passed away, he gave me all of his books. And he has tons of books, hundreds on history and war and nonfiction. And I've looked through most of them. I don't have any room at my house to store them right now. And eventually I am. I'm really grateful for that. And so that's something I really want to get through someday, go through his library.
Having too many books is never a bad problem.
No. But I haven't been able to get through all of them because there's some in the back of the house I just haven't looked through because it's kind of hidden behind like these cabinets and things. Yeah. So I was just looking, so I'm going to go back there and look at them. I haven't been back there before. Look down like this. It's like a word bookcase. So there's books out front. There's like a sliding, it's two halves. Yeah. And it slides back and there's more in the back because they're hard to get to. So I never really looked at them. And I slide them back and there's almost the complete works of John Steinbeck. I bought the 6 short novels of John Steinbeck at the bookstore for $30. He had it at the house. Yeah. They had The Grapes of Wrath. They had The Winter of Our Discontent. And they have a bunch of Hemingway, like For Whom the Bell Tolls. For Whom the Bell Tolls. A Farewell to Arms. And The Sun Also Rises. And a bunch of other novels. Then a bunch of classics. And honestly, my heart hit the floor. I said, score. you know. So I really want to get into Hemingway,
Mm-hmm.
Fitzgerald. They have a ton of Fitzgerald up
Yeah.
at the high school. This side, they have the other side of Paradise. F. Scott Fitzgerald, Hemingway, Steinbeck, a lot of American authors. But also, I didn't even really. 2 days ago, I didn't even consider getting into Russian authors
Yeah.
or French authors.
Well, yeah, you messaged me last night and you were like, "You want to read this?" I was like, "How much does it cost?" You said $3. I was like, "Yeah, for sure."
And I said I was going to read it like this week because I'm reading a bunch of other stuff right now. He said, "Let's do a podcast on tomorrow." I said,
Yeah.
It was like 9 o'clock, and I said, "Okay."
Might as well, right?
Might as well say did it. Now, the whole world of literature is open.
Yeah. And there are other genres and subgenres of literature that we've yet to explore. And we can't
Absolutely.
possibly explore them all, but we'd like to explore as many of them as we can. Even if we don't go really
Yeah.
in depth into them, just having exposure to them little by little is good, I think.
Because I was hoping for a summer of Steinbeck for me. But
Yeah. I would like to.
I want to explore
Diversify.
different stuff. I need a lot of classics this summer.
Yeah. And I think you said Summer of Steinbeck. I think I'm going to have a summer of reading.
Summer of reading, absolutely.
I usually have a project that I like to do each summer, and I think this summer it'll be
We do.
just reading everything that I
And
can.
we got a lot of college classes this summer too.
Yeah, and
But one of the good things about it is
I'm sure they'll involve some reading.
yeah, I have an ethics course this summer,
Yeah.
college ethics course, and I said, oh, I have to read a bunch of stuff I don't want to read, and I got 2 books, and I started reading one of them, and I said, this is actually pretty good.
Yeah.
So I started reading it before the class even started because it's very interesting.
Yeah,
It's,
and then we have public
relevant.
speaking classes this
Yeah.
summer too, and although they're probably not page turners, I'm sure we'll learn
I
a
don't think
lot.
they have any books, public speaking courses.
No, we do.
We do?
Yeah, we don't have to purchase them though.
Okay. Because at McKay's, it's the best bookstore on the planet.
Yeah, of course.
Of course, I got, not for any class, but a book on public speaking and oral communication.
Yeah,
A textbook on
our
oral
professor
communication.
actually wrote the textbook that we're using.
Really?
Yeah.
But yeah, just learning. For the podcast too.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's going to be beneficial to learn how to talk.
I hope so, yeah. And this is a bit of an inside joke with anyone who knows me. I did not do well at public speaking.
There's some stories, I won't get them on the podcast, but after I'm finished reading my public speaking book, I'll be more than willing to gift it to you, Ethan,
Oh, okay.
to
thank you.
help in your endeavors.
Thank you.
But yeah, Ethan's a good public speaker. He has the potential to be a great public speaker.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
But there was a few moments where there was some, not issues, but just inexperience.
Yeah, sure.
Because getting up in front of 100, 200 people when you've never done it before,
I think there was more like 500 people.
500 people is terrifying.
Yeah.
And you're not alone.
Yeah.
Americans fear number one over death,
Public speaking.
public speaking.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's something that everybody's scared of. And the book I'm reading right now on public speaking talks about mental blocks.
Yeah.
Are extremely, and that's what most public speaking errors come from.
Mm-hmm.
But,
And we mentioned earlier just reading everything we can. That's something a lot of successful people just talk
Absolutely.
about. Just read. Doesn't matter what. Read.
Just read, enjoy stuff, get new ideas, learn,
Yeah.
branch out, read anything, read romance, read science fiction, read nonfiction, read westerns.
Yeah. And I dare I say, read in a different language.
Yeah.
Learn a different language and read.
Read whatever you want to read.
It just changes your brain. It really does.
And I was reading an article today talking about don't be afraid to read dangerous books. Read books you're not supposed to read.
Banned books or books you
Banned
disagree
books or
with?
anything. Read books that are, not the norm.
Yeah.
Broaden your horizons.
Yeah.
You don't have to agree with a book.
Yeah. No.
You
don't.
can hate what it's saying.
But you can read
if
it.
you understand what the author is thinking, understanding what they're coming from, even though it might be horribly evil or inappropriate,
Yeah.
is beneficial.
I think you mentioned just reading being. Well, we both mentioned it. Reading being beneficial in all aspects of life. I think when you've read a work before you approach it in a classroom setting, I think it's incredibly beneficial.
Yeah.
Because that allows you to kind of share your experience and your thoughts with your classmates.
Well, we have to read. We have to take a British and American literature for our college courses next year.
Uh-huh. You do.
I do.
I'm not there
and,
yet.
My goal is to have read most
Of the works.
of
yeah.
the works that they're doing in
Yeah,
class
that's
before.
one of my goals too.
Because on a reread, I'll read them again for the class. I won't not read them.
Oh yeah,
But hopefully on the second reading, it'd be much more comprehensive.
I agree for sure. And I think that would also help eliminate some stress because we're pretty busy fellows, right? we do a lot of things.
A lot of things,
And-
especially here recently.
Yeah,
It's like everything's been kind of
exploding.
exploded.
Yeah, especially this past month.
past month. So much stuff has started.
Yeah,
It's been incredible.
yeah. But just having read a work before
Yeah,
allows you to understand it better,
absolutely.
and you don't have to worry as much about getting every single detail.
I mean, talking about being busy, people say I don't have time. I've been more busy in the past month than I've probably ever been in my entire life. I've read more in the past month than I might ever had in my entire life.
You make time for what you want.
So I've been extremely busy, but I've read more than I did when I had a lot more time.
Yeah, I agree.
Finding what you enjoy. If you want to make time for it, you can.
Yeah.
Make time for yourself.
Yeah, and this podcast is a big source of. It takes a lot of time.
It takes evenings.
Yeah, more
For
so.
you, more evenings than me.
Yeah,
editing.
because I have to edit constantly, and I control the social media, and
And I'm in contact with people.
yeah,
Emailing people. Get in contact with, trying to get people on, scheduling,
Mm-hmm.
figuring out, am I going to be available at that time in 2 weeks or 3 weeks?
yeah, and that's very challenging
And
because
some of these people you don't want to
you don't want to reschedule on.
reschedule because they're giving us a big opportunity by just coming on and talking to us. So
Yeah,
we want to be as accommodating as we can.
yeah, for sure.
But yeah, it's just, life's good, man. Live it.
Yeah.
Live it.
Just make time for. Now we're up on tote boxes, and I don't even know if we'll include this in the episode.
We
but
should.
Yeah, we might. But yeah, just I think to go back to the book, if you want something in life, you just kind of got to go for
You
it.
got to do it.
Yeah,
You can't sit around forever
and dream about it.
and dream about it. 'Cause,
And
you
this is gonna sound incredibly naive of me, but when I was younger, I would be like, "Oh, I want to learn how to do this or that," and I would watch YouTube videos on it, and I would never really try.
Yeah.
But then one day, I just tried something, and then I didn't stop.
They said most people don't know what they're doing when they're starting out.
Yeah.
They
And I
just
guess
do it.
some people describe it as paralysis by analysis,
Yeah.
and I think a lot of people fall victim to that.
To that idea. I mean, it's just, and again, the guy knows story. I mean, that's what books are all about. Look at the conversations White Knight sparked.
Yeah. And this isn't even that influential of a book, all things
No.
considering.
But it could be to the listener.
Yeah.
And that's why, if you think this could touch you in any way, or even if you don't, read it.
Yeah. Just
Try it out.
give it a try.
Or give it a try.
And-
Try something in the same field.
It's not like it's a 700-page commitment. We read it in an hour.
hour and a half.
Yeah, if that.
But yeah, I mean, just.
And if anyone is unable to purchase it, just let me
free.
know.
And that's the good thing about classics. If it's accessible to
Yeah.
pretty much anybody.
Yeah.
And
I'm
go to
sure-
your local library too.
Yeah, I'm about to say a library. I'm sure there are copies.
Because you don't have the money for this and that and that. And okay. And then that might be the case for a lot of people.
Yeah, and I think I was kind of like lying to myself a few years ago because I used to be a very active reader, but I slowed down these past few years. And I used to tell myself, well, these books cost so much money. Like, I don't want to. But then I was like, oh, wait, there's a library. I can just go to the library.
And the library books up at Carroll and Galax are extremely well taken care of.
Oh, of course.
They have these Harvard classics at the library, and they were beautiful.
Yeah, and you can order books from the other libraries, too. They don't have it at Gale. Yeah.
How many libraries?
It's a lot. So there's,
9?
I guess, I don't know.
A whole library system.
Mm-hmm.
So literally hundreds of thousands of books are at your disposal.
Yeah.
And you can do them online, too.
Yeah, it's very. Oh yeah, so you have this service called Libby
Through the library.
through the library, yeah, and it's just this app you can download, and you log into your library account, and you can rent these books online, and you can have them sent to your Kindle. They're audiobooks.
Yeah.
I've listened to an audiobook through Libby. It's a great resource. If the library doesn't have it physically,
Yeah.
it's almost a guarantee that they have it online.
I love to collect books.
Yeah.
And I used to, and at a certain point, I'm running out of space in my room.
Yeah, me too.
And I've been utilizing the library a lot here recently.
Yeah.
And you don't have to own it.
It's so
to
much more
read it and
cost
enjoy
effective
it.
too.
And these books, they ain't going anywhere.
Yeah.
They're going to be up at the library. Somebody might check them out, but you can go up and get them in a week or two anyway.
I mean,
so
if you think about it,
it's yours.
you're just expanding your collection even more.
I think the library is some of the best things the government's ever done. The public library system. And I hope it never goes away.
Me too.
But yeah, just get out there.
Yeah. And,
Because it's at your fingertips. And a lot of people don't use their local libraries.
yeah. And I guess as we're wrapping up the episode, Luke kind of jokingly stated last episode that the meaning of life to a $2 bill is to not take things too seriously and just to explore things. And I think a similar lesson can be departed upon White Knights.
Yeah.
Just try new things, right? We took a leap by reading Russian literature, something we haven't really did before. And it ended up being incredibly beneficial.
Beneficial, absolutely.
Yeah, less than 24 hours ago, Luke texted me and said, "Do you want to read this book?" I said, "Yes."
I didn't even know White Knights existed.
Me neither.
At this time, 24 hours ago.
Me neither.
I'd heard of Dostoevsky.
Dostoevsky, yeah.
We had his name good at the end of the episode. I'd heard of him before, but I never heard of how many actual works he had.
Yeah.
I was reading like an article on Goodreads, which is a... Have you heard of it before?
Yeah, I use it.
I love reading reviews on Goodreads, and it's but just people talking about getting into Russian literature, or expanding classics. I started looking at classics, and I looked at Russian classics. And I said, well, this looks cool. And I said, hey, let's just do it.
Yeah.
And we did it. And we got out there, and we didn't even think about it much, and we just did it. So sometimes, if you got something you really want to do,
Just do
don't
it.
think about it too much. Just go out and do it.
Just do it, yeah.
If it's safe, of course. If it's legal
That's true.
and not going to get somebody seriously hurt or injured
Yeah.
or cause lasting damage, you go out and do it.
Yeah.
And sometimes it might be a little bit dangerous.
Yeah.
As long as it's legal. But
And moral.
and morally correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because he was just stuck in his mind.
Yeah.
And that's scary because it can happen to anybody.
Yeah, they can. And I think it's hard to be aware of that if that happens to you. And I don't really even think you realized. And I think that's the kind of story that Dostoevsky was trying to tell.
And me and Ethan, we can't talk about every book we read on the podcast.
No. And
But we'll probably have conversations like this many more times this summer.
yeah.
Because absolutely, and that's not listed on the podcast. Because,
Just as a fair warning to the listener, this summer we would like to keep the rate of interviews up, but me and Luke are both very busy, especially during the summer.
this summer's going to be
Quite chaotic.
Yeah.
And we're hoping that you'll be patient with us if we release a book talk or topic talk this summer.
It might not be episodes, interviews every week.
Yeah.
More than likely, because we have a lot of books we want to talk about.
Yeah, and we try to keep the listeners in mind as we're doing the podcast, but this podcast is also something for us, and we enjoy these book talks.
And could we see it going somewhere? Absolutely. But we also want to keep it how we want to keep it too.
Yeah.
And I would be interested in having somebody from the library, our local librarian, come and having a book talk with us. You could have almost an interview and a book talk at the same time, so have it more.
I think interviewing a librarian would be
I would love to
amazing.
reach out.
Yeah. My parents were talking about that last night.
But yeah, just get out and live life. And talking about this summer too. Ethan, you want this summer to be this summer of reading. Me too.
Yeah.
I wanted this. I look back at this summer and said I read more than I ever read in my life.
Yeah.
And why does it have to end this summer?
Yeah.
But summer's a good time to categorize things and hit it hard.
I agree. I think I've already read 16 books this year. I'm on a. Some people do like 52 books in a year. I don't think I'll hit 52, but I'm on a pretty good track to hit a lot.
Now, if you read a lot of short classics, you could get through.
Yeah.
But you want to read longer stuff too.
Yeah, and I would like to hit things that I want to read.
Yeah, absolutely. And this summer I wanted to hit a lot of classics too. But I also have a new guilty pleasure, John Grisham. I literally bought 3 of his books today.
Yeah.
Not bought, at the library.
Yeah.
They have free books. And you can
Keep.
keep. And they're good books too.
Yeah.
I have about 3 new John Grishams at the library. You can, please, more than welcome to have a donation.
Yeah.
I always make a little small donation when you're taking out books because it's a great service they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
But if you can't, you don't have to.
Yeah.
You can take them home with you for free.
Yeah.
So I've gotten 5 or 6 John Grisham novels from the Carroll County Library, and they have new stuff all the time.
All the time, yeah. And then every time around October, they have book
Massive
sales.
book sale.
And I got probably 30 books last year for $10.
And they bring in books from all sorts of places. They don't use the books from the library. They bring in new books.
Yeah.
And I can't do in the library enough how just
Support your libraries.
support your local libraries. Absolutely. And that's the last thing we say in this podcast episode. Support your local libraries.
Yeah.
So Ethan, White Knights.
Yeah.
It was informative.
It was.
It was a classic.
It was.
Horizon expanding.
Yeah, it was for sure.
Absolutely. So that's why we do it, folks. That's why you read this type of stuff. Or this exact feeling right here.
Yeah.
You know, open your eyes to
It's a bit
new
euphoric.
experiences. Euphoric.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So to end it up, go out, support your local library, and get your hands on anything you can read.
Yeah. Read books.
My name is Jeffrey Watson,
And I'm Ethan Edwards.
and this is the Ridge Podcast.
You can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Pandora, iHeartRadio, YouTube, Instagram, and as well as your favorite podcasting app. Our email is theligspodcast@gmail.com, and our website is theligspodcast.com.
If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out.
Thank you.